Hey everyone, good morning. Welcome to the third edition of the SendCloud Engineering Meetup. My name is Arjen. I work at the engineering team of SendCloud. This third edition is all about pipelines and releases, and for that we have two speakers. One is first is our very own Nicole van Alphen. She's product lead at SendCloud, and she's going to talk about We're going to talk about our release strategy. And the second speaker is a guest from AppSignal, Tom de Bruijn, software engineer over there. He developed Lintje, a linter for Git, and he's going to do a very nice talk about that. So what we'll do is both presenters will do their talk first. We'll take your questions online, so feel free to drop them there. And we'll pass them on at the end of the talk so they can answer them. Having said that, enjoy it. Enjoy your lunch if you took an early one. And I'd say, Nicole, come over and take it away.
All right. Thanks, Arjen. And welcome everybody to the meetup. My talk of today, how can you raise your game in seamlessly releasing software? So we're going to figure out that today. But first, let me see if I can switch the presentation to the next slide. Not yet. Yes. First, a little bit about me. Indeed, I'm Nicole. I'm a product lead at SendCloud, working specifically in the efficiency domain. That means that I'm mostly focused on order processing, warehouse automation, and analytics. I joined SendCloud in 2018, and in total, I have 8 years of experience in product management. I was involved in multiple major feature releases at SendCloud. Some were very successful, others with some big lessons learned. And one of those big lessons learned I'd like to talk to you about today. But before we dive into that, I'd like to go through a little bit of the SendCloud way of working. I already mentioned I'm part of the efficiency domain. So within SendCloud, we have split off the product into multiple domains, each domain focusing on one particular part of the platform and focusing on one part of the user experience. Each domain consists of multiple feature teams, and in total we have 9 feature teams working on our platform today. This means that we release quite often, sometimes 10 to 15 times an hour. So we are very agile, we work very fast, we iterate very fast. That also brings me immediately to the biggest learning for me at SendCloud. So this image shows a little bit more about sprints, working in sprints. We work agile, and that's what you see in here. So basically we plan a sprint, we build what was planned, we test it, we review it, and then we release it. And we do this continuously, and it's important that you keep on releasing your iterations to the customer, as most of you will know who also work in agile and with Scrum. But this way of working raises one main question. Where does releasing to the user actually fit in this image? What's an appropriate time to release to the user? You may wonder now, why does this matter? Well, it actually does, and let me show you that with an example. Taking a step back from SendCloud and actually looking at an example that everybody is familiar with, Netflix. So this screen is very familiar to you probably as well. It's the login screen of Netflix. So let's all imagine this day is over and it was a very stressful day for you and you want to unwind with your favorite Netflix series. You log in, you select your profile, and you want to immediately dive right in. But you notice that Netflix slightly changed the positioning of their play button. Not a problem, you can easily find it, you forget about it, and you can enjoy your series. 2 days later, again, very stressful. You have a lot of deadlines to meet before the end of the week. You log in again at the end of the day, want to watch another Netflix series. But again, the play button slightly changed positions. You can imagine that if this keeps on happening, it gets frustrating to you, and you get the feeling like, why are they constantly changing my experience? And this is actually what we experienced at SendCloud. So we had a couple of customers that came back to us after we did a lot of small releases, and I want to highlight 4 particular quotes. So the first one said, when are you going to stop with all of these changes? So very frustrated, just as I explained just now. The small iterations were piling up and up and up, and people were actually getting frustrated by all the changes because they didn't have time to actually adapt to the software we were building. Secondly, somebody asked, where can I find the filter? So this was clearly a sign that with the iterations we were developing, people were getting confused. They weren't familiar with the product anymore. And instead of focusing on their core tasks, they were actually focused on finding what used to be very logical to them. Another question was this really necessary during the day? So this shows an example of disruption at the user. So the customer was, in our case, probably working on processing their orders, making sure their shipments were going out of the door. And instead, all of a sudden, everything changed for this user. So he was wondering, why now? Why not a different moment when I wasn't busy with trying to fulfill my day-to-day tasks? And lastly, even one customer asked us, how can I go back to the other view? I cannot work like this. So very unhappy, very unsatisfied, not happy with the changes we were making just because the way we were releasing them. These were 4 quotes, and if we recap them into the biggest problems we were seeing, we can actually identify 3 main points. First of all, the users lack time and focus to instantly adopt new features. When releasing software, you have to make sure that, or be aware of the fact that you are constantly working on your software. You're in your software trying to improve it every day, every hour of your day. However, your user is doing something else. In the case of SendCloud, the customer is actually focusing on getting their shipments out, getting their orders out of the door as fast as possible. So users don't always have the instant time and focus to adapt new features. Secondly, what we figured out was that it was really hard for us to collect feedback during this development cycle, and that this is really, really challenging. Everybody working in Agile, everybody who works in Sprint knows that iterative working and working based on customer feedback and customer input is of great importance. But actually, by the way we were developing and releasing software, we found it more and more challenging to actually collect feedback while developing a new feature. And thirdly, releasing new features with confidence can be a real struggle. This ties back to my previous point. If you don't have a good framework to get feedback in from your users, you will feel less confident about your new releases, and the risk of wrong iterations or unhappy customers increases. So you want to make sure that with your release strategy, you actually feel confident with what you're releasing, and that you are actually developing the right thing for the right audience. So 3 main points, 3 main problems we identified. We saw how people were feeling. How did we actually solve this at SendCloud? Well, first of all, always keep your user in mind. I cannot stress this enough. At the end of the day, you are working on the software, but you might not be the end user of your software. So this screen shows a actual user of our platform. This is a picker in a warehouse trying to pick his orders. He is not always focused on your software. He just wants to get the orders out of the door as fast as possible, as many as possible, to make sure that all the orders arrive to the consumer as fast as possible. So make sure that you are aware of this. Apart from the fact that this user is focused on a different task, you also have to make sure you know who your user are. So a picker in a warehouse might not be super tech savvy. Also, in the case of SendCloud, pickers are usually seasonal workers, so you have to make sure that your software is very easy to learn, very easy to use, so that pickers can just immediately dive right in, start using it, and continue working with it in the most efficient way possible. So your user is your main focus. Secondly, we completely reviewed the way we were releasing software, and now we have implemented different phases to different types of users. So this is a very simplified way of how we work and how we release software in SendCloud. Basically, we have identified 7 steps in this case, so where the first step is really focused on data management, so collecting quantitative data, collecting qualitative data, knowing what our customers are doing, knowing where users actually have problems with our systems, for example, and then we gradually release to different kinds of user groups. So one example I'd like to highlight is, for example, our beta community. We released to our beta users, which has greatly helped us in determining what is actually the problem and if we are actually releasing the right thing. Our beta users, we have a community of about 500 right now. They are generally more forgiving about bugs. They are our power users, so they're a very good pool of users to test new features out. And then we just, if they approve our new software, we just continue gradually with releasing in the next steps. One other thing I'd like to highlight here is that these steps are all optional. This is just one example of how we release software. Sometimes we use 7 steps, sometimes we only use 4 of them, sometimes we can release very small things immediately to all users. So yeah, depends on what we're actually building. And thirdly, what we did is we identified low-risk ways of releasing new features. So with the release strategy I just pointed out, in some cases we are replacing an old feature with a new improved feature. However, it can happen that we release something with bugs. We don't actually want to get rid of or revert the entire new release, but we allow people to switch back to the old version. And if they do, they can provide us with feedback. This is a low-risk way of releasing new features. If you missed something, if people are still not happy, even when you tested with them at the beginning, you still have a very fast way of just allowing them to go back to the old version, and this gives you a bit more room to play with during your releases. Okay, so this might all sound very nice to you, but you might have a few things on your mind right now. First of all, you might think now working agile is impossible with such a strict release strategy. Nicole, what you're saying, it might work for SendCloud, but you're really not working agile anymore. I disagree on this point. As I said at the beginning, we release 10 to 15 times an hour. We work very agile. However, working agile doesn't mean disrupting your user flow constantly. So I think with putting the user first and thinking a little bit more about how you're actually using your platform, you can still work very agile, but just be a bit more mindful on when you're actually releasing to the user. Another thing you might be thinking right now is the full release cycle takes way too long to work well. I can imagine you think this way, and to be honest, yes, it does take a bit longer than if you would just release to everybody. But to me, this is a real balancing act. Balancing the risk of releasing something that is incorrect versus taking a bit more time to validate what you're actually working on and knowing you're actually going to release something your customers will love. And thirdly, you need to invest the foundation to release gradually. Again, very true. I think if you're having this concern, you have to really think about where you are currently in your company, the company size, how many customers do you have. We started to adopting this way of releasing almost 3 years ago now at SendCloud, and we really found that this greatly improved the way we were working. all teams can release software in the same way. We have that foundation now. We have the beta community fully set up. But yes, it takes investment. It costs money at the beginning. It costs time at the beginning. But at the end of the day, for us, it was worthwhile. But it depends on where you're, in what stage of a company you're at. All right, so that was actually it. Together with my colleague Caroline, we've written together a Medium article. If you scan the QR code on the screen right now, you can actually read that. It goes a bit more in depth. Also very happy to speak to you if you have any more questions or tips, so connect with me on LinkedIn. And I'd like to end this talk with a nice quote. How wonderful would it be if we can bring speedy development and great user experience closer together? Thank you.
Cool. Thank you, Nico. Thank you. Nice, nice talk. I got a few questions, and first one is actually, why are we not wearing our SandCloud sweaters?
Oh, because it's getting spring. I don't know.
True.
T-shirt weather for me.
Freaking hot, probably now. It's a good sweater, maybe too good for this weather. All right, maybe in winter time again. All right, so other question I got is, well, actually, I didn't get this sweater question. I made it up myself. But so, do you also do like something like roundtables with customers, like before you start? Because now you also you presented about like things that you release and then review with customers. But do you also do it ahead of a release?
Yeah, so we don't really organize roundtables in that sense, but I think you can see our beta community as being one very big roundtable. So apart from releasing to beta users within the development stage, we also have a page they can access and they can talk to each other, and we also post questions there. Sometimes we even post questions like, if you would have to choose between feature A and feature B, what would you like to work on? So we have open discussions with beta communities in those, and with beta users in those ways. We also do a lot of surveys. We visit customers, so we have a lot of interactions with our customers throughout the entire development stage.
Okay. How many customers are in that beta community?
Right now, around 500, as I believe. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Cool. That's quite a group. And yeah, to your last point, I had a question about that as well, which was about, do you actually also visit customers and then look at their way of working to kind of understand what their problems are?
Yeah, actually, we visit customers quite a lot because, as I also mentioned in the presentation, we are not the end user of our platform. So it's really good to know to completely immerse yourself into the way customers are working. I actually visited 10 customers in Italy last week. So we really put an effort into getting to know our customers in great detail.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Do we have any other questions? I don't think so. I have one myself though, because so it's nice to share like how things go in a positive case, right? Do you have an example of like a big of a kind of a fuck up with related to releases, like something that did not go so well, and what did you learn from it?
Yeah. So if you go to the article Caroline and I written, we completely explained the case on what did not went well, where actually I took the quotes from. A few years ago, we completely rebranded our SandCloud, the whole company, including our platform. We did that in very small iterations because we felt that that was the best way of working. And then at a Tuesday at 10 a.m. in the morning, we released to every customer a full rebranding, including changing the location of the main menu bar, and customers hated it. They were not happy. Everybody was spamming our customer service. Why we did this? Why at 11 a.m. in the morning? So much confusing, and that was actually the trigger to start working the way we work today.
All right. Oh, that's good learning. All right. Well, thanks again, Nicole.
Thank you.
We have another speaker upcoming. That is Tom, because well, you know, while building all the software to be released, as Nicole shared, yeah, we need to kind of also share with people like why do we make certain technical decisions. And Tom, welcome, Tom. Tom is a software developer from AppSignal, and Tom wrote an article about commits in Git and using Git as a communication tool. And based on that article that you wrote actually inspired you to also develop Lintje. So we'll share that article anyway afterwards, because it's a very interesting read. And well, Tom, please take it away. You'll also, for the audience, for Tom, if you've got questions, drop them online. We'll ask them afterwards. And yeah, this is going to be the more techie talk of today. So go ahead, Tom.
Okay. I have shared my screen. There it is. Hello, welcome. I'm Tom de Bruijn. I've written a Lintje, and I'm going to tell you a little story about Lintje. Lintje is a opinionated linter for Git, and that is because I have opinions about Git. They are not very extreme opinions. I'm not saying you should write it this way and no other way, but I have opinions about how we can improve things in Git. I want to show you some examples of how I think we shouldn't do it, which is commits like work in progress, which is great to see in the merged result. I want to know what was work in progress. Did you ever finish it? Update the code. Okay, this is better, but what code was updated and why? Or, okay, we're getting better. Fix bug. What kind of bug? What was broken? This is an alternative. Okay, we're linking to an issue. Now I need to open whatever ticketing tool we're using. Oh, it's closed already. I need to use another tab, another system, blah, blah, blah. And I have completely lost what I was doing. So not great, this kind of experience. If you're like me, you use Git blame. Git blame is a great tool, not to assign blame, but to find out why and when something was changed. But I think a lot of people have burned out on this because, you get these kinds of not useful commits, like work in progress, which doesn't tell me anything. Maybe I can ask the author, oh, he no longer works here. Maybe someone remembers working with Dave on this issue. Oh, wait, it's been 6 years. Probably not. So I have to start from scratch, which is going to cost me a lot of time. I would like commits to tell a story. I want to know what was happening at the time. Commits will be read after they're written, after they're merged. They provide a crucial snapshot in time of they tell the constraints under which something was written, if they actually contain this information. So in other things, like commits should have a subject and message, like this message is there for a reason. We can provide all this extra context. Make small commits so I don't have to, so that if I find the commit that introduced the problem, I don't have to still split it up again to see what actually was the problem or where it was introduced. I want commits to explain why the commit was made. What was the problem? What are we fixing? And why was this solution chosen? Because this kind of information helps me debug the issue in the future. And I want to know why some alternatives were considered, because this alternative might actually be better right now, because the constraints that were initially in place 6 years ago might no longer be a problem. And we can now do the alternative that they wanted to do, the original author, but couldn't at the time. And as always, include examples, include links to sources, just show what happened before, what happens after. If you reference the blog post or whatever, link to it so your colleagues and teammates can reference it later, maybe learn something while reviewing. All this kind of information will contribute to creating documentation from your commits. It will tell you the story how the project evolved. Commits are read at 2 certain times, either during reviews and during Git blame when you're debugging. So write it for both of these scenarios so that you don't have to be fully immersed in the sprint or cycle or whatever you're using. The team can also read this after the fact when they are no longer actively working on this project where the commit was introduced. So I had all these opinions and I wrote a blog post about it. Which I will link to later. I forgot to add a link here, but it's on my website. And I heard some good responses there, and people were like, "Okay, great. We should do something about that." While writing this post and afterwards and during, I was writing Git standards that basically are my Bible of how I think Git should work. This is not public at the moment. I still want to publish that at some point, but not there yet. But yeah, that contains all the information on which I based this blog post, and later on my talk that I gave at Noruko when Euroco couldn't happen because of the pandemic. And yeah, that was also great. Like, I shared this knowledge, people were enthusiastic, but then a problem occurred because this enthusiasm kind of disappears. We want to write better commits, but then we don't actually start writing these better commits because it's not top of mind. Oh yes, this one talk that I heard a month ago, already forgotten half of it, didn't take notes, whatever. This happens. People forget. I forget too. How many times I have made commits that I was like, oh no, this is actually terrible. I should have written more stuff down, but it's already merged and now it's too late. So what can we do to improve this? One of the things we can do is try and enforce this, like automated checks to make sure that the commits we write are actually pretty good. Because writing and talking about this is not good enough, people forget. So let's look for some tooling. And as I was doing this, I was looking for a tool that I could use in my own team to check for these kinds of things that I wanted to check on. But I didn't want to enforce any strict templates. I didn't want to have people use prefixes for everything or emojis to indicate if something was a bug or a feature or documentation, etc. Emojis they can have different interpretations, and if you're not, you have to keep the reference next to you to be like, what emoji mean again? It might not apply to your team, might work for your team, but I was like, I don't want to strictly enforce this to anyone. Another point that I sometimes see with these kinds of linters, that they're like, okay, great, we're using this format so that we can immediately generate changelogs in the future so that we don't have to write them after the fact because people forget, or merge commits or merge conflicts, all that kind of stuff, which I don't agree with, because the type of information you put in your commit is not actually the same as you would put in your changelog. They're for a different audience. One is the team that is actively working on it and needs to know all the technical tidbits, and the other one is the actual user of your thing, your tool, your project. They just want to know how it impacts them. They don't want to know all the other stuff. They just want to know, like, oh, it changed this, it renamed that. That's all I need to know. So use something like ChangeSet instead. I've been using it. I like it a lot. So I was like, okay, I'm not finding this tool that I want. I can't configure it the way I want it, so I'll write it myself. How hard can it be? I don't have enough hobby projects yet. All these unfinished things can wait. I'll start something new. I'll pick up Rust. I've been using it at work. I want to create a new project from scratch. Again, how hard can it be? So last year, I thought, okay, I've been prototyping long enough. This is my project, Git linter, because I'm terrible at naming things. I'm not very original. So it's like, okay, import Git linter. Kind of happy with this. I can iterate on this and actually make a proper history rather than, hey, it's done. Initial commit, done. But again, I'm terrible at naming things. So I asked Twitter. I gave a couple of examples that I was considering. I thought Git OK was pretty okay, but it is not very self-explanatory. So I asked for some suggestions, and it was actually Floor that came up with the winning suggestion. Floor is one of the organizers as well here. And yeah, Lintje was the new name of the project, which is, lint is also a word in Dutch, which means ribbon, then translated back in English. And we attach to it in Dutch to make it more cutesy or small. So it's like small ribbon, kind of, if you keep translating it over and over again. Also, our king gives a lintje that if you do amazing things for the country or other people, then they give you a award. So lintje. So let's look at lintje in action, because I've complained about like stuff I want to see in commits that are not happening. But how can lintje help with this? Well, lintje, after installing, is just a matter of running lintje on the command line. It's just this binary that you can run, and it will check for things like formatting rules. These are the things that most Git linters will have. It will check for things like subject length. Is it too long? And it will give you a warning if it is too long. For this case, it checks for like 50 characters for the subject, and it will highlight exactly what kind of characters are too long in your subject. This kind of output is inspired by Rust itself. While I was writing this program, I was like, oh, I'm jealous. I want this in my own tool. So that's where this comes from. Another thing it will do is check the message line length. So we have subject lines and message lines, but it also needs to check if there's actually a message there, and it will say to you, like, please add a message. You can fit so much more information here. Another thing it will do is check for punctuation. This is maybe a little nitpicky, but this is my preference of like, I understand your enthusiasm, but please move that to the message body. This is not really the thing that belongs in the subject if you want to explain what the bug was that was actually fixed. Another thing it will check for are content rules. And these are the ones that I'm actually very interested in, because it will check for things like the fixed bug commits, the commits that are not very useful if you want to read them back. We'll also check for things like update test or update docs or update stuff, like all this generic thing, like I just update a thing. That, again, doesn't really tell you much. It will check for these kinds of commits, and it will tell you to please describe it in more detail. So fixed bug, work in progress, update test, all these kinds of commits are checked here. Another thing it will do is check the grammatical mood, because, again, maybe another nitpicky, but fixing bug, your commit is not actively fixing bug, especially if you read it back. So it will check if you say rather fixed bug than fixing bug. Again, fixed bug itself is a terrible commit, but the grammatical mood is better than fixing bug in this case. Another thing it will do is check for this ticket number. This ticket number that you put in your subject. I'm not saying ticket numbers are terrible. Please put them in your commit, but don't put them in your subject. They are great to put in your commit still. Again, it will highlight exactly the part that it considers to be a problem in your subject, and it will move it down. I'm actually trying in my free time, for as much as I have any, trying to make this message even better, to, again, be like Rust and say, okay, move it to this line in your body, like move it at the very end or something. This message will even be more detailed and more helpful, and like exactly what you need to do in the future. Another thing that I use a Git feature called fix up and squash commits. They are like small commits that you can make during your development, and you're like, okay, I need to actually, this part of the changes need to be put back into this other commit, the closest 1, 2, 3 commit. Again, terrible commit, but it's telling your future self, I need to rebase this commit back into the other commit. But you still need to do that. You don't need to forget that. Like what has happened quite a lot of times is that I've sent in a PR with this. I shouldn't have done that. Should have rebased it, but then didn't check, and then the pull request was merged, and now this fixed up commit is there for forever. It's merged in the history. We're not going to rebase the master branch, main branch. So this fixed up commit should be rebased before you push it or merge it. Again, look at this feature. It's amazing. Another thing it will do is check for things like merge commits, and it's not that I dislike merge commits. Merge commits are great. They have a purpose, but I think they're being used too much because it's the default behavior in Git. So what can you expect? But what this is specifically checking for is that if you have a feature branch and you're merging in the remote feature branch or the remote develop branch, your branch that you branched off of, that's not great, because I don't need to know that you pulled new changes in every other commit. Like that's unhelpful. The history becomes unreadable because you have all these merge commits there. So it checks for that kind of thing, rebase that scenario. But once you merge your PR pull request into the main branch or develop branch, then you can make a merge commit. That's all fine. And of course, another thing it will do is check if the commit actually has any changes. I learned a lot of ways to break Git in this regard. You can make changes without any subject, without any message, but also without any file changes. And Lynch will check for that. So it will warn you like, hey, maybe this is a leftover from a rebase, or maybe you forgot to add changes. Please do that. So there's not just like this noisy commit that you're like, whoa, this is a major change. Oh, wait, there are no changes. Of course, commits aren't everything. We also have branches. So Lintje will do the same kind of checks for branches as well, because fix 1, 2, 3, again, doesn't really tell much. You can add more stuff at the end there to say like, okay, fix 1, 2, 3, which was the email validation, blah, blah. Doesn't need to be a whole sentence again, but a little bit more information would be helpful. And again, we'll just warn you for things like, hey, this is a cliche, maybe rewrite it. So yeah, how can you actually then use Lintje? Well, I use it with a Git hook myself for just locally whenever I'm making changes. It will immediately give me feedback like, hey, Tom, you forgot to do this, or you put something there, please move it around. That's great. I have it configured in such a way that if I break it, it doesn't immediately stop making the commit, which most checks do, I think. It will just tell you to be like, you need to fix this, so please amend the commit that just made, and then it will all be fine, but you don't need to start from scratch again. You don't need to jump through hoops to get your original message back. And then finally, the CI, because it's great if you just check it locally, but this is a team effort with working with Git. So whenever we push something, please check it in the CI as well. In this case, you see it running here, and it will just tell you all the things that are wrong with all the different commits that were pushed for this branch. So this can be more than one commit, and it will just give a red check. So the PR does not validate, like it doesn't get approved in that regard. So that way the whole team is on the same page with the same following the same rules. So recently, I've been working on a website for Lintje because putting all this information in one Git repository was becoming a little crowded. So I made a website that gives you all this information. Please note, I'm no designer. This is made by me, a developer with very little design skills, just using whatever I thought was working well. So it might change in the future. But yeah, this kind of information is here. I've written very lengthy information, which I will link to from Lintje in the future. Be like, hey, do you need more information on how to resolve it? Please use the documentation that you can find here. You can find it at lintje.dev, which is the domain. And thank you for listening. I hope it was interesting. And if anyone has any questions about how to use Lintje or the rules that I made, please let me know.
We have a few questions. I have 2 or 3 questions from some folks backstage, and I've got 2 myself as well. That's its advantage. When you're the host, you can do your own questions, right? But let's do the audience. Let's do the audience first. So first statement or question was, how about non-trivial changes that are not accompanied by documentation? You'd like to have like a linter complain about it. Is it something you do, or?
You mean like the actual code changes?
Yeah, and then if it's non-trivial and then it's lacking documentation, you want a linter to complain about it. What do you think about it?
Well, I mean, if it's in the code, like you're documenting a function or something with inline code, comments, then no, it will not check the actual content, because then I need to actually start parsing all the changes. Yeah. It's currently just focused on the subject, the branch, and the message body.
Yeah. All right. Hey, and are you open to PRs, yes. Or can people fork it and add their own features?
Yes. People can contribute their own changes. I prefer if people create an issue first, so we can discuss like what the actual change is, because again, it's an opinionated thing, in my opinion. But my opinion is open to change, of course. Like if someone has good arguments of why to do something differently, I'm all ears. But yeah, people can definitely contribute to this. I encourage it.
All right, cool, thanks. Question about, so you using Lintje, do you use it currently at AppSignal?
Yeah, we use it in one team specifically.
Okay, can you describe a bit what are the results there? So is it easier to get new people up to speed or something because they can see all the information? It's much more documented, or what are results for your team?
Yeah, I think over the last couple of while, we've been writing a lot better commits. Like sometimes you're just like, I just need to fix this one thing, and then just the subject, and you're done. No, nowadays we've also onboarded 2 new people, and I think they've been writing a great commits. And Lintje just helps us do the last check to see if we're on the same page. But we hardly run into issues that like PRs are failing because of Lintje. It sometimes happens, but not a lot. So, yeah, it's been great.
All right. Hey, and my last question: Did you already get a Lintje for this or what?
No, I did not get an actual physical Lintje or anything. No.
Okay, maybe when it becomes like a real big success, we'll make sure you'll get a Lintje. This is like you already said, for non-Dutch people, this is a hard one to understand.
Yeah.
But I would say Google Lintje and then something with King's Day, and then you'll understand the point. But yeah, Tom, when this is going to be even bigger success, then we'll work on a Lintje for you. That would be awesome.
Thanks.
All right. So having said that, thanks, Tom. Thanks, Nicole. I think there was like some more questions online for Nicole, but we'll see if we can cover these afterwards. I think one from Bianca I saw later, but yeah, we'll cover that one. Next up is a meetup in what's the next month? April. We do it monthly. We don't have a topic yet. We're currently working on 2 topics, something related to green computing, lowering emission in data centers, and another topic is that we're working on is a Python specific topic. Which one exactly when you'll see, just follow it on meetup.com and sign up, and you'll see. And if you're not joining any meetup, one of these topics, there's a chance to see us anyway, because we'll be at Go to Amsterdam this summer, we'll be at EuroPython in Ireland this summer, KubeCon in Spain, and also DevOps Days Eindhoven. So also shout out to those folks. We'll be sponsoring them, and we'll be there as well, locally over here. So meetups, events, enough moments to see us. Again, thanks, Tom. Thanks, Nicole. And see you all next time. Bye-bye.